Well, hello, and welcome to Race Talks Uncut, brought to you by Charles Jackson Media. And I want you to lean in and join the conversation tonight as we seek to reach across racial differences by tackling the tough topics and embracing diverse cultures. If you are with us every week, you notice we're starting a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties backstage, yet I am still pumped and excited about the conversation. Thank you to those who are already joining the broadcast and telling us how much you're looking forward to this discussion. As always, share it out, drop your questions, send the hearts, the fires, everything. Interact with us through this entire broadcast. I'm excited for my guest tonight. I'm excited to be the host of this incredible show. Each week, I pass the mic to bold and courageous change champions that help us unpack culture, systemic racism, racial disparities, heritage, and more. My mission is simple: to help us connect, challenge the status quo, and together crush racism. And to that end, we must engage and break down information regarding race relations, social divides, and connecting across differences. And this week, we're just going to add another layer to our culture cloth. Listen, I say it every week, we are all one race. And although we have our differences, those differences should not divide us. You see, I believe thoroughly that belief drives behavior. This is a phrase that I've coined, and it was a profound moment when that realization hit me. And there's no secret that our strong beliefs are driving the division that we see and have in our nation right now, be it generations, race, gender, religion, or social class, which we're going to dive into tonight. So you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But can you believe it? It's already time for season 2 to come to an end. It's hard for me to wrap my head around it. We've been going strong for 2 seasons, and this season we've had 14 incredible guests. But before we go, we're going to go out with a bang, because we're going to close out this season with a very special treat. This month is our author spotlight segment. And I want you to come alongside me for a moment and just imagine sleeping on a cold park bench in the heart of winter, or picture that as your bed night after night. Imagine your meal consisting of leftover scraps out of a garbage can, or maybe on a good day, someone would be kind enough to give you a few bucks to get a hot meal. But think about the shame and the judgment you're going to feel beaming from the eye of the public. And some of us may have been those ones that were doing the judging, especially when we haven't experienced some of the things that individuals who are faced with homelessness situations are experiencing. There's a stigma that is around it. They're deemed lazy, dirty, or crazy, all because they can't find affordable shelter. But for this finale, I'm chatting with author and activist and homeless advocate Terence Lester. Terence has been featured on CNN, Good Morning America, NBC, places like Reader's Digest and Black Enterprise, Essence, and The Today Show. He's known nationwide for campaigns that bring awareness to the issues surrounding homelessness. Terence is the founder of Beyond Walls, a nonprofit that has helped hundreds of individuals experiencing poverty actually rebuild their lives. We have something in common there, and I'm excited to share that with him. I haven't even told him about a particular passion project of mine. And in 2019, he launched the first museum in the U.S. representing homelessness, listen, out of a shipping container, called Dignity Museum. Terence has written 6 books, and as I said tonight, this is our author spotlight. So we'll be discussing with him his new book, When We Stand: The Power of Seeking Justice Together, released May 18th, 2021. So we're going to be diving into this tonight with Terence. So after our quick intro, Terence he's backstage. He's going to join me for this powerful discussion to help us wrap up season 2 of Race Talks Uncut. Like always, get ready to engage with us in the chats, because I'm going to be throwing comments on the screen. right, there he is, Terence Lester, man. Welcome to Race Talks Uncut. How you doing, my friend?
Charles, it's good to be here. I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I probably would have just said okay last week and maybe even the week before. In full transparency, it's been a rough 2 weeks for me and my family. We've experienced some loss and we've had some challenges, man, that we've had to work through. And as you and I shared backstage, we're still trying to press forward and do the things that we feel like we're called to do. But sometimes you actually have to pause and experience some of the things that you're going through because we are human. We're human. We're men, right? But this week I feel a whole lot better, man. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate. This, past 18 months has been, a combination of mountain peaks and
Yeah,
valleys.
yeah,
A few weeks ago, I lost my grandfather, um, which was an important man in my life. Um, he was probably the first person to ever tell me to make, family a priority.
yeah.
And he was married to my grandmother for 70 years. And I
Wow.
just got a chance to see him model, faithfulness to his family and also the work that he put his hands to. And so seeing him transition was bittersweet.
Yeah.
I know he is transitioned to a better place, but, you know, uh, his absence is definitely missed by our family.
It's miss. It's miss. And we're gonna get into that very thing, man, about how those relationships have shaped you, shape us, continue to have an impact on our lives, and the importance of maintaining those healthy relationships. I read a bit of your bio, and I say a little bit because, folks, believe it or not, I did leave some stuff out. I didn't want to give it all away. He's done some incredible things that I didn't want to take up the broadcast. Reading the bio, I want you to get to know him for yourself and hear him speak about his passion projects. And let's start there, Terrence. I've read some of those accolades, but I like to start each segment off like this by asking the guests to really help us get to know them by describing or sharing with us what passion and purpose are you currently walking in and fulfilling, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a really loaded question. What is on my heart present moment is waking up every single day and fighting to create a world where no one is invisible. And
Mm,
specifically, that has to do with our neighbors without an address or those experiencing homelessness. Um, that is fleshed out through an organization that I founded almost 8 years ago now called Love Beyond Walls. And we have advocated on behalf of our brothers and sisters without housing. We have done, a number of projects to educate the general public as a way of building empathy towards this population because there's a lot of misconceptions
mm-hmm.
um, that people hold on to from second and third hand information. But most importantly, we have established this organization to wrap a communal arm around those that we encounter. And I say community not lightly because it's essential to our work, building relationships with people experienced in homelessness and then walking with them as they journey out of homelessness. And the reason I say walking with is because we don't make an emphasis to walk for. We are called to walk alongside individuals, and we've been doing that for almost a decade, and have seen hundreds of people reunite with their family members. Get access to their identification cards, get access to housing, get access to gainful employment, not making a minimum wage, but a living
Wow.
wage. We've seen people be trained and also build relationships with the people who aren't necessarily their family, but they became their family in the context of community. And so uh, I love it, man. It's been my passion, and it's something that I also feel very close to because I
Mm,
experienced a little bit of homelessness myself when I was a teenager. I remember teachers and educators overlooking me because they didn't understand why I was falling asleep in class. I remember, having to try to figure out where I would find food when I was living in parks, or sleeping with permission of my friends over their houses. Um,
Wow.
and it's just, I like to say that the things that we go through um, can oppress us, but they can also empower us, right?
Hmm.
When we find the passion and mine out the passion in our pain. So that's what I've been doing for the last almost decade.
Wow, man. I was going to ask you to sort of plot the path to this particular platform that you've created, but you shared a little bit about that, your own experience with homelessness. And I'm, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I want to go there because you kind of opened the door. Thinking back through that and plotting that path to this particular platform, Love Beyond Walls, and everything that Terence Lester represents in the community that you built. I was reading in your book where you were sort of describing that, and you said something. You were talking about the context of your family, dad not really being around, mom being there, doing what she can. But I read this and it stuck out to me. You said, "My mom did all she could to raise a young black man. My anger would not allow me to receive instructions from men that tried to talk to me who were not my own father. I was broken and I couldn't understand why my family was too. And so living anywhere other than my own home felt like a better solution." Can you describe for us, Terrence, like your mindset during that time? What was it that you felt like you was really struggling with? Was it an identity thing? What was going on during that time that led you to be like, it's better off if I'm out, just get out of this situation. So much so that you would sleep on park bench and like you said, with friends, and if they would allow you, like what was going on during that time, and what sort of brought about the change, or what was the transition point?
Yeah, those are great questions. I would like to preface my answer with this statement, and it's basically this: that there are people right now who have shelter, who are experiencing a sociological homelessness. Right.
Mm,
In my book, I See You, I define home as a place where you feel seen, accepted, and feel like you have a place where you belong.
yeah.
And that definition within itself speaks about the presence of home as opposed to a physical
Yep.
structure. And there are so many people who haven't found home, even
Jeez.
amongst those that they are proximate to, right? And so homelessness within itself is much more complex than just a person not being physically in a place that has shelter. I've met people without an address who were more at home in encampments than they were around people that they couldn't trust. I've met people who have had shelter and the luxurious homes,
Hmm.
but they had no connectivity and they felt as though they had no place, right? And so, a lot of my shaping came out of this real pain of not necessarily feeling seen, accepted, and as if I had a space to belong within the context of my family. And I'm sure that many people have wrestled with that. I think connection is, you know, uh, is wealth.
Hmm.
We talk
Yes,
a
sir.
lot about economics, but relational equity is a form of wealth that is so overlooked these days. One of the things that I've learned in doing this work over the years is one of the hardest things for people to get past is not necessarily securing a job. It's not necessarily finding a bunch of programs to offer these resources. It's having the relational safety net
Mm.
and community of people that will walk with you through this journey. I normally ask people to reflect in a rhetorical way, I asked them, if something was to happen to you right now, if you were to get a flat tire or you needed someone to show up and support you, many of us can pick up our smartphones and scroll through our Rolodex and find someone that we can reach out to. Imagine being in a place where your every single second is compounded by stress and lack, right?
Right.
And then you have no one to reach out to.
Yeah.
I relate to that. And I'll never forget, I had a friend whose father became my mentor when I was 16 and a half years old. It was a night when I was standing at a gas station. I'm begging for change because I'm about to sleep in a park. And the reason why I was begging for change is because I needed to use the payphone to actually make a phone call. This guy walks up to me and he asked me, what on earth I was doing out there that late at night, because it was a school night and I'm young. And reluctantly, he gave me $2. I walked over to the payphone. I called my friend Eric and I go, Eric, when he picks up the phone, I says, do you mind if your family allows me to come over to get something to eat? Because I don't know where I'm going to eat tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay in the park again.
Okay.
He puts down the phone. He drives. He goes and asks his parents, and he says, "My parents said, come on over. They love you." Eric's father was one of the first guys that I could ever look in the eyes, and he was the first person at 16 and a half years old that told me I was going to be a leader. Right. He was also the person that encouraged me to put myself through college. Encouraged me to marry my wife of now 15 years. He was also the one that spoke to me about my pain turning into purpose and how that would be translated into some type of organization, which became Love Beyond Walls. Essentially, he saw me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in his seeing, created a space where I felt at home. And the first year I started Love Beyond Walls, he passed away from cancer, and I'll never forget standing at his funeral, giving words about his life. And when I looked around, it was a community of people that he saw. And, I've tried to model my life like that, as well as, obviously Jesus, in seeing people and being proximate to those who are vulnerable and overlooked, and being moved with compassion, as the scripture says. And that's where I am now.
When you do see it, man, you gave us so much to unpack. I want to go back because you said something, man, that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, bro. You talked about that sort of duality of no place to call home and no physical place to call home, but then also this place where you don't feel safe, you can't be vulnerable, you don't have the protection, there's no mental, maybe an emotional support there, right? You're struggling maybe with identity, like all of that is going on, where you still, like you said, they may be in a structured home, but they still feel like they're not home, right? And so that, wow, I've never heard anybody really talk about that when talking about homelessness, because it could start there, is what I was getting to. It could start with that first, that leads to then physically being out of a home. And then connection being wealth, and you use the word relational. I don't know if you know this, how much, you and I have been interacting with one another, but it's mainly through Race Talks Uncut. But I have a leadership network called Relational Leadership Network. And I talk about how the most significant things in our life, they start and come back and are tied to some type of relationship, whether it's at home or at work, in the community, and how powerful those connections become, because they become the fuel for us to flourish, to try things like Mr. Moore. I hope it's okay if I say his name right. In the book, you talk about him being the one who looked at you and said, you're a leader, called you a leader, and you're looking at the context of your situation. Like, what? I just came over here to get some food. I'm about to go sleep outside. And you talking about me being a leader. That particular relationship became the fuel for you. Whether it was 5 months or 5 years later that hit and took root, however it happened, that was fuel. Relationships, connections, it's wealth, man. And I couldn't agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Michelle Andrews, I see Chairs, I see JP. Michelle said the power of connections. Yes, that was so powerful, man. Um, and so now as you're going through that, you're sort of walking through being homeless. You experience that. You start getting things together. You go on to finish your education, several degrees now, pursuing a doctorate. But there may be other people who are struggling, to find their purpose, struggling to try and make sense of everything that they've gone through and experienced. And they may think that things are just wasted. They've waited too late. Too many bad things have happened. They've made too many mistakes, right? And I know this topic of purpose is near and dear to you as it is to me. So I want you for a second, if you don't mind. Someone once said that we can fulfill different purpose at different points in our life in different seasons. So I said like this: at the point where your gifts and talents meet a human need, to me, that's your purpose. There's something for you to be doing. But you have an entire series dedicated to helping people find their purpose. Why did you decide to explore that particular topic specifically?
Yeah, you're talking about the docuseries
The
Find Your Why.
docu-series, Find Your Why, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to purpose, people think that when you find your purpose is devoid of pain.
Mm,
Um, I have a friend. His name is Dave Gibbons. He came up with this thing called the pain continuum,
okay.
and basically, it's you confess your pain, and then you kind of learn to embrace it, and then once you embrace it, the pain then becomes a god, right? And then the god kind of shows you how this can be translated into something purposeful and
Okay.
impactful that services other persons. And then, once it becomes a God, it then becomes a gift. And after it becomes a gift, you serve that to the world. Most times when I'm talking to people, people think that I just happen to arrive into leadership. I never sought leadership. I didn't seek starting an organization. I didn't seek a lot of the things that I've been able to do. One of the things that I have done is I've learned how to mine out purpose out of the painful moments in my life,
Hmm.
because I know that there's some other individual or individuals out there that feels isolated and feel alone. And what I'm trying to do from the bottom of my heart is serve the Lord by being proximate to those who are also in pain.
Hmm.
I think one of the greatest testaments to the glory of God is when a community comes together in painful moments and wraps its arms around each other, right? I think God gets glory because it's through that connection that we are able to find power and purpose and support and love and all of the tangible resources that we could even be overlooking. The other thing too is, you know, I take the analogy of, a puzzle box.
Mm,
Every piece in the puzzle box put together creates the beautiful image on the front of the box. Well, there are everybody's been given a piece, right? But some people find themselves comparing their piece to others. My piece isn't as big as so and so. It doesn't have, a smooth shape or
mm.
whatever it may be, and they kind of withhold their piece, right? And that's a double entendre. Not only are they withholding their gift that they could be offering in collaboration with others to make a difference in the world, but it's holding that also creates frustration
Yep.
in a sense, and it causes a person not to be at peace with what they can give. And basically, what I'm trying to communicate to people through this docu series is that your piece connected to someone else's piece, connected to someone else's piece, makes the impact that we desire to see. It's, change happens in community. Change happens when we have that connectivity to other people. And who are we to withhold what God has given us to share communally?
Yeah. Brian Bolden said that is so good. Charles Jackson said, come on with some hand claps. The reason I like that because I have a puzzle piece on my mirror, my wife and I, because a while back, God was kind of dealing with me on that very thing, talking about puzzle pieces. And I have been sort of asking, and this is even tied to your story of what you went through, how that prepared you for what you're doing now. Thinking about the puzzle piece, and I was thinking about the puzzle box. And oftentimes when we grab the puzzle off the shelf, we see the image on the outside of, what it's supposed to look like. But then we got to go home, we got to open it up, and we got to take each piece and put them together piece by piece to get to that image on the box. So our problem, if I'm hearing you right, is not necessarily with the outcome, because we want to, like you say, they see you as this good leader, and they see you speaking, and they see Love Beyond Walls, and they like I read NBC to the Day Show, 6 books and all of that. But you had to put these pieces together piece by piece by piece by piece. And it's probably not even the final product that we're seeing right now, because, there's more for you to do. Who knows what's coming next? And we're going to get into that, how just recently something else came to you during the pandemic. But I'm glad you said that, because oftentimes we think we just fall into purpose. We just wake up, and it seems like some people wake up shooting threes, the greatest 3-point shooter ever, Steph Curry, but it wasn't an overnight thing, even with him, even though it's probably in his genes because it's his dad and all of that. He still put in a lot of work. Right. And so I was thinking about that as you was talking about purpose, that even in the pain, and how our pains, your pain and my pain, can come together. Right. And we can do purposeful things together, even after, we've had our own individual experiences, because you talked about, again, a community that is supporting the homeless. And so I really love that, man. So there's a lot of talk about homeless people, and, that being a lifestyle that they choose, that one that's chosen. It just happens to addicts or people who lose their mind or go crazy, and they get opted out of society. So my undergrad is in social and criminal justice, and one of the books I was reading during that time talked about, it used this phrase, rabble management, and it talks about getting the homeless from loitering, getting the homeless off a park bench. They refer to them as rabble management, right? Those that have been outcast and opted out of society. But what would you say to those who may think that people are homeless because they're lazy, they choose it? What's the message there?
Yeah, well, firstly, homelessness is not monolithic, right? It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
There are different ways that people encounter homelessness, and I think it's very apparent in the context that we find ourselves in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of people are facing evictions, even starting within the month of September. 43 out of the 50 states have released the protection against evictions. People are still furloughed as well as laid off of their jobs, not making enough adequate income. And the leading cause or the leading trigger of homelessness is actually job loss. Most
Okay.
people think it's drug addiction and mental health issues. The other point, too, is that homelessness is not relegated to just a few persons standing under a bridge or on a street corner. Homelessness is a global issue. And I think sometimes we have a very small, myopic view of what homelessness is based upon the second and third hand information that we received about individuals. There's another thing that's on the rise, and I think you alluded to it, which is the criminalization of what it means to be homeless or without a house. One example is just this past January, the city called Port Royal in South Carolina. I think you're in that state right now. Banned sleeping outside altogether. You can be fined $500 to 30 days in jail if you're found just sleeping outside,
Wow.
which is very oxymoronic when there is a bed shortage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only in that city, but across the country. There are other cities, like we were just doing work in Denver, where you can be fined or placed in jail for sleeping out of your car. We just partnered with a community called the Safe Parking Initiative, where it actually finds parking lots and rents those parking lots where people can actually live out of their cars, even if they're working jobs. The number of people we met, even just last week, who are working jobs but don't make living wages and can't afford the inflation of rent. The largest group of people experiencing homelessness are children under the age of 9. There's a whole community of kids that we even saw during the pandemic that were using Wi-Fi, sitting outside of restaurants during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
where when kids weren't at school physically. There are people who are fleeing domestic violence. There are people who become ill. My wife and I lost her brother, 38 years old, to COVID last year, and saw the effects of what it did to our nieces and nephews
Mm-hmm.
with one income loss. And there are so many different segues into homelessness. And the question I would ask people is, who told you that? Who told you that about a
Wow.
person that you've never met?
Yeah.
My friend Tyrus would say there's healthy fear, but then there's fear that is damaging. And what he's basically communicating, he's saying that when I stand on the corner, when you turn your head away, when you lock your doors, it does something to my self-esteem and my confidence. He says, I'm Tyrus. I'm a
Yep.
brother. I'm a father. I'm a cousin. I'm someone's son. I'm a grandson. He started listing all of these attributes because he's saying that sometimes our fear of people without an address does more damage to their confidence than we actually even allow our minds to think about, right? And we also have to ask ourselves, is how I'm treating those without an address contributing to the invisibility of this community,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because just because a person doesn't have an address does not mean that they're not your neighbor. If I can borrow King's words, where he says, we live in a world house, and
Yeah.
so the world is our
The world
address.
is our
And
address.
how dare we exclude someone from being in the house?
Amen, bro. I remember talking about making the invisible visible. Um, was at a Saturday feeding for the homeless, and this young man, struck up a conversation with him. Um, he was the youngest in the group. Everybody was pretty old. Seemed like they had been, probably in this particular context of homelessness for a while. Had kind of gotten used to it, but he came in very young, a little bit cleaner, and I'm having a conversation with him, and then talking to him, just asking him, how was the meal? Is there anything else we can get you? Where you from? What's your name? That type of stuff. Really engaging with him. He began to break down crying, Terrence. And then as he got himself together, he said to me, I'm a little embarrassed because the majority of people, since I've been homeless these last 3 months, as I moved and left a traumatic situation in Georgia coming down to Florida, when they see me, they turn, they go across the street, almost like what we see with black men. We kind of have that similarity. He said, and they don't even look me in the eye. He said, I don't think I've had somebody who was not homeless look me in the eye until you did just now and just asked me my name and what's going on in my life. And in that moment, I realized what you write and talk about in your book, making the invisible visible. Like when we get to a certain place where somebody's situation is unfamiliar to us, it makes us uncomfortable, right? And so we avoid it. That's why there's no eye contact. That's why it's going the other way. It's not necessarily because we don't want to give them any money. I think it's because it makes us uncomfortable and we don't know what to do. There's probably other things going on, but that's probably one of the big things. And so as you talk to us about, you say this global pandemic, systemic poverty, and increasing our proximity, how do we sort of, like, what is systemic poverty and how do we break through this thing to be able to increase our proximity to those things and those people that we have, whether it's media or what somebody else said about a homeless person has made us judge the situation the way we are. How can we get around that and push through that?
Yeah, there are a number of ways. I think, firstly, it starts with deconstructing some of the myths that we have about, the experience of homelessness within itself. I was just leading a group of real estate agents through the immersive experience at Dignity Museum. You mentioned it earlier. Yesterday, this real estate firm brought about 33 real estate agents, and we went through all of the stations, and then they went inside, and it was three different groups. And there was this black guy standing in a group. He had his mask on, and I was talking to many of the guests about some of the things that I mentioned. And, there were so many aha moments where people were reading the walls. We have this wall, it's called the empathy wall, where there are actual phrases that we took from signs from people that we've helped transition out of homelessness. And one of
Yes, sir.
the phrases on the wall says, "Mom told me to wait right here." That was 10 years ago. And this guy's just crying. And after everybody finished talking, he shared for the first time publicly with all of his colleagues that he experienced homelessness. And he told the group that one of the reasons he didn't share is because of how they might have perceived him. But he found the opportunity to be able to talk about it because he felt seen. And I think a large part of what needs to happen is this visible awareness and making those who have been dehumanized seen. We need to humanize these stories. We need to listen to these stories, but also we need to carve out the time to be proximate. A lot of people often ask me, where do I start? Well, you start with margin. Many people, it's not that many people aren't willing, it's just that many people aren't available,
Unavailable.
right? It's not a willingness issue, it's an availability issue. And I think
Yeah.
the more that we focus in on removing things off of our plates, where we can make service a lifestyle instead of an event
An event,
orientation,
right? Come
we
on, say
can
that
we can
again, man.
actually,
Go, don't
yeah,
don't
service
slide
is a
that one in.
lifestyle. Yeah, service is a lifestyle, is not an event. I've been teaching my kids that since they were
Jeez,
old
man.
enough to understand. And so I think the rhythms that we can create by creating the margins would allow for the type of proximity needed to immerse ourselves and understand the whole community as a part, as opposed to just parts of the community that we identify with our busyness in our lives. And that's why I start the book out talking about busyness and some of the
Yeah.
barriers that keeps us from being proximate to community, or even entering into partnerships with other individuals doing work on the ground. These things keep us from being, the change that we wish to see in our communities.
Yeah, man. That's so good. So I'm gonna pause for a second, man. We're gonna have a quick break. Hear a word from our sponsors. We're gonna come back for part 2 of the discussion. Give a shout out to the folks who are in the comments. If you have any questions, please drop them. This is what this man is living and breathing right now. A topic, as you can tell, near and dear to him, based on his own experiences and just what he's done the last 10 plus years. So if you have questions, drop them. I'll get them over to Terrence. And also when we come back, we're going to talk about our giveaway as we do each week. Give away some merchandise. I may even have to purchase another book from you, Terrence, so we can give a lucky attendee tonight a book, and we give away some t-shirt. We'll do a little bit of everything since it's the finale of season 2. So Let's hear from our sponsors and we'll be right back.
Hello everybody, my name is JP Tech. I am the founder of Content Creators University, and we are proud to be sponsoring Race Talks Uncut with Charles Jackson. For those of you who do not know me, I am a branding expert, cinematographer, and software developer. What I do is help businesses, entities, individuals, ministries, and so forth have a better impact with high quality visuals in regards to graphic design, professional videos, or even high quality live stream. So after 12 plus years in the industry, I've decided to open this digital master school. So what we do is every single week, we connect with one of the best minds and professionals in the tech and content creation industry. What they do is come on the platform and teach us how we can have a better value proposition, elevate our craft, and keep impacting with our creation. So if you're the type of person that want to keep growing, as we know, technology is an industry that is always evolving. Come and join me every week. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, JP High Tech Reviews, or simply visit my website, jphightech.com, or better yet, go ahead and download the Roku TV or Fire TV application. Simply look for JP High Tech, or visit the contentcreatorsuniversity.com for more. I am excited to connect with you and see you there. Bye-bye.
All right. Welcome back. Race Talks Uncut. I'm Charles Jackson, and I've had the pleasure the last half hour to sit down and talk with Terence Lester. He has been dropping so much knowledge and wisdom surrounding the topic of homelessness, how he went from experiencing homelessness himself to being an ambassador. I mean, he's been dropping some knowledge. So at this point, I want to stop and just pause and thank all of those who have been in the chat with us. I'm going to go ahead and bring Terence back from backstage so we can shout out some of these folks who have been in the comments. I see Terence Jackson. I see Marie. Thanks for being here, Marie. One of my first guests when I started my podcast a couple years ago. Laura Williams, thanks for being here. Laura said she had a comment earlier I wanted to throw up here. She said a homeless man died by freezing to death in Bloomington, Indiana, right before last Christmas. That was during the piece where you were talking about banning sleeping in parks and things of that nature. James Hicks, I see you, man, says thank you for bringing this message. Diana Shaw, wow, just because a person doesn't have an address, it doesn't mean they are not your neighbor. Laura also talked about we need accessible housing. I see Brian Bolton. I see JP High Tech. If you are on Facebook, what's up, folks? We're getting ready to, at this point, if you want to be entered into our giveaway, you need to come over to YouTube because that's where we have the giveaway at. The team is going to be monitoring it. You go to the chat in YouTube and you drop hashtag Race Talks Uncut. You would be entered to win and receive some merchandise. We have a new line out, our clothing line, Connect Crush Challenge clothing line is out. And we got some new merchandise. And so we're going to have somebody that's going to win some of that merch tonight. Matter of fact, give you a quick preview of it so you can see it. Let's see. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Let me go back. Let me bring my guest back while I put up. I'm going to pull it up so you can see it. Also, when we were hearing from our sponsors, Terence backstage said that I don't have to purchase a book from him because he's going to donate a book tonight so that way we can give away a book as well. So Terence, I really want to thank you for that. and being willing to do that as well. Let's see if we can show them the merchandise. One thing you did say, man, when you were talking about connection is wealth, we're getting ready to now talk about your book and kind of go into that. That really stuck with me and resonated with me, because I think sometimes we can dismiss relationships, right? We'll let them go too easy. And I wanted to come back real quick before we go into the book content to give you a moment to talk about that, dismissing relationships too easy, not working on them because we don't see the value in them. You want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, relationships are essential. They are also messy. And I think
Yeah.
we have allowed a cancel culture mentality to not allow ourselves to go long distance in relationships.
Mm,
Um, but on the flip side, you know, relationships are also can be seasonal. They can be a burden, and I think what we have to do is be very discernful or discerning about the relationships that we do have.
yeah.
Relationships should be safe and a place where you can be vulnerable, a place where there is no pretense. Relationships shouldn't only provide love when you're achieving or meeting some type of expectation. Relationships that are healthy provide love and affirm your worth and inherent dignity, regardless if you're achieving or not. Relationships are essential, man, because uh, I believe that it's just not good for any person to be alone.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. 100%. I think that's that people feel that we get from relationships, and they either, like you said, it's messy and they're hard sometimes, but there's so much value in them. They help us grow. They help us see things about ourselves, right? There's things in you that I might need, meaning your gifts, your talents and abilities, going back to the whole connection piece. That's why I love that you brought that up and gave that analogy about the puzzle, because I don't have all the answers, and
Right.
some of the load that I try and carry. Not that I just drop it off on you, but man, there's no greater
You
love
can
than a
help you
brother that can
carry.
come alongside you and help you carry their brother or sister. And so
You,
I feel like people who are in the margins, especially experiencing homelessness, that's probably one of the biggest things that, would you say that's a need? Oh,
it's a huge need. I mean, you find purpose in relationships. You find purpose in community.
yeah.
Um, you know, Sometimes we forget that community or relationships is a form of privilege.
Ooh,
You know, there are relationships that have given people jobs, or relationships that have introduced you to other relationships um, that have become beneficial to you in your journey. There are relationships where, I mean, just one conversation has unlocked the type
yeah.
of clarity you needed to take the next step forward. I mean, relationships are essential, but relationships, if we have them, are a form of privilege. And,
Mm,
you know, a community that is without, that social equity, are at a great disadvantage, because a lot of things flow through relationships,
that's
you
good,
know?
man. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. So we're going to be giving away, I say I was going to show them, didn't I? We're going to be giving away some merchandise tonight. Our new line is out. We are one. We got the colored and we have the black and white. So we're going to be giving away that shirt tonight. Somebody's going to be getting that. We got a couple designs, but we're going to be giving away this particular one here in color tonight, as well as my man Terrence's book. Boom. When We Stand. I got my copy. I'm going to have to get an autographed copy. I got my copy here. Somebody else is going to be getting a copy tonight. So I want to thank you for that, man. And since the book is up, I want to go ahead and dive into what prompted you to write this book.
Yeah. it was years ago when the Charleston massacre happened, and I remember finding out that nine um, members of this church were taken. Their
Mm-hmm.
lives were taken. I remember where I was and how I found out. I found out from my cell phone, smart device. And then I started to, kind of go through these emotional reactions there alone. But over the course of many years, I started to notice how when we find out information that is traumatic, it's all from this smart device, right? And sometimes we go through those emotions alone, or we can be isolated, or sometimes multiple things can be happening around the world
Yeah.
at once. I read a quote one time is that said that you can experience 10 different things happening around the world that are injustices at one moment and feel the pressure and the weight of all of those 10 injustices in your body and feel the angst and the anxiety creeping in.
Wow.
And so, that does a number of things to people, man. Some people get really paralyzed
Mm-hmm.
and say, "What can I do?" I can't do anything by myself. Other people kind of shut down. But I wanted to write a book that would uh, give people an understanding that they actually can do something, and they can do something. If they can't correct the entire thing, they can do something within the context of their own community, connecting with other individuals to make a difference right where they are. I'm a firm believer that national change happens locally first. um, and you get a lot of people working on the local level, you can actually create the ripple effect that you want to see happen nationally. But you got to start with where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and you also have to start with who's around you. And so while we can spend time on the phones or like reading all these news clippings, my question is, who are you connecting with around you, and what are you all doing in the context of communities? Because there's issues right in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, One thing that rings true for me, that the change, and I believe this is the underlying tone of what you're saying, the change that we're looking for, the change that we want to see, it's not something that's really going to be done on Capitol Hill or through a policy. It starts on an individual level, right? Looking to the left or right. What can I do to influence and affect what's going on immediately, either in my home or in my community? And so it starts with you and me. We are the ones who are going to drive that change that we want to see. You said something in the book that I wanted to read real quick. You said, when we start to see the world through a lens of we will fully grasp what Father Ball means when he says, there is no them and us, there is only us. By understanding our need for one another and decreasing our levels of isolation, we can actually begin to enter into a spirit of community wholeheartedly, becoming proximate and present to our brothers and sisters who are in need, our neighbors. I feel like has been and was, especially over the last couple of years, a lot of divisive rhetoric that was put out into the airways and things that have been going on. How do we move, right? And some of it was even coming from the highest level of leadership in this country, right? If you know what I mean. How do we move past going from thinking them to us?
Man, you reading that reminded me of I was on a campaign. We had launched this campaign called MAP 18, is March Against Poverty 2018. My board of directors and my staff allowed me to walk from Atlanta, Georgia, all the way to the Lorraine Motel where Martin Luther King was assassinated. It was over 400 miles. It took me a little over a month to get there. And when I started, there was this people walking with me, and people started to show up every single day as I walked to bring attention to poverty and, this divide that you're talking about. And the further I walked away from Georgia, I started getting into these smaller country towns where I started to see all these like Confederate flags. I had people calling me out of my name, like expletives, calling me the N word, calling me boy, trying to hit me with their trucks. And I'll never forget, I had people who were following this campaign ask me, why wouldn't I just quit? Because it says, you're putting yourself in danger.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started doing the research within the context of the towns that I was walking through, I realized that many of the persons in those towns were also facing poverty. And so the question then became, do I stop this, or do I continue to advocate? And I came to the place where I wanted to advocate even on behalf of those who were mistreating me, because they too were facing poverty. And it was this question that I really had to wrestle with: is how do I allow love to allow me to rise above the
Mm-hmm.
mistreatment, to still stand with my brother and my sister, who may not even understand why they are acting out or behaving in the way that they were behaving. That's the only way I got through, was love, and the understanding that I am also fighting for and fighting on behalf of those who may be acting out and doing this mistreatment. And it's just, I kind of had to lean into this idea that Martin Luther King was talking about, that only love can drive out hate, man.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I am saying, is that in order for me to keep myself grounded in the mission that I am on, I have to operate with a mentality that I live in a global village, in a world house, and that I am interconnected with every single person that I come in contact with. That what I do for somebody else, I'm also doing for myself. And I think that we need to shift our perspective and realize that together is the way forward. Together is how we move injustice out of the way. Together is how we tackle issues. Together is how we provide the type of healing and restoration needed for all of our communities. And devoid of that, we will continue to see conflict. But somebody has to move in peace, and somebody
Mm.
has to operate in love, and somebody has to extend the table, right? Build
Mm-hmm.
longer tables instead of higher walls, and somebody has to have this posture of heart to say, yes, yeah, we can, it's not me.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And coming together and being that person who extends really love and grace, understanding that we need it too. I think what I hear you saying over and over and over again since we've started talking is we have to understand that we are all connected, right? You talked about, the world being our address. You talked about who our neighbor is not the person with an address right next to us. You've talked about how at any moment I could be the one experiencing this situation or experiencing homelessness or whatever it is. We are all connected. And it would seem like in a world where social media and the World Wide Web and all of the information and things where we can do meetups and, I can learn about what your organization is doing, Love Beyond Walls, and I can get on a plane, train, boat, however, or drive and support you in what you're doing, where before I wouldn't be able to do that we would be more connected than we were previously. Because before I could really just connect with the stuff that I could see around me on the local news and the local paper. But how do we, and then, because you're really calling us to be global citizens at this point, right? And get beside this self-seeking. And when we hear somebody's story, we put our own story and traumatic experience above theirs. And, I just constantly doing that because you are saying we are better together. You're saying we are better together. And I think that was the heart of your message in this book and what you're saying now. You said,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Man, it's one of those things where um, I think we have to have a heart of compassion. We also have to have a heart full of empathy. And we also have to realize that we're not in this world by ourselves, right? There are some people who will make you think that the world only belongs to them. And, you know, if you say it's my own social location or my own historical shaping, that may have wired my heart to be more inclusive and empathetic and compassionate towards individuals who are wrestling with vulnerability. But my whole idea is that we have all been pained in some way. Harry Nowen talks about us being a part of the human suffering
Mm-hmm.
that we all experience. And I believe pain within itself is a universal language and a bridge. That your pain
It's
may
good.
not be my pain, but I still don't want my brother and sister to go through pain by themselves. And if we could truly grasp the notion that you were talking about, except for the grace of God, there go I, it would humble us. We don't talk enough about humility
Yeah.
and humble our hearts, where we can take the posture of servant, uh, to have a palms up approach instead of a palms
Right.
down.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, um, if I have my palms down, that means I'm coming to serve. But if I have my palms up, I correct myself. If I have my
I'm
palms up,
pumped up
that means I'm always asking for
for
something. And
something.
yeah, I've just learned that um, there are two types of people in the world. There are accumulators and there are distributors. And accumulators spend most of their lives accumulating a bunch of stuff only to get to the end of their life to downsize. And distributors see themselves as faithful stewards over that which they have been entrusted, and they use that to their advantage to serve something bigger than themselves. And that's just my heart. I just want to
Yeah.
serve those around me.
Yeah.
Just think if we've had more people with that type of heart,
Absolutely.
and say, what can I do for my neighbor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to be entered into tonight's giveaway, we're going to pull two names tonight. And these individuals are going to get a t-shirt. Somebody's going to win a t-shirt. Somebody's going to win a book. So on YouTube right now in the chat, drop hashtag Race Talks Uncut to be entered. We'll pull two names. We'll get the book out to these individuals and the t-shirt. I want you to let us know what we're going to walk away with after reading this book, Terence. What will we walk away with after reading this book?
Yeah, I think a person will walk away with finding a space to serve and finding community, but also finding the issue uh, that they would give their service to. A lot of people just don't know where to start, and I communicate that all throughout the book. I lay out plans on how to create the type of margin, help people really assess themselves to see where their passions lie, but also I try to inspire people to figure out where their passions fit. And you said it earlier. You said it best when you say, when you really discover your gifts and talents and you meet a need with that, boom, there you go,
Mm,
purpose.
yeah,
So people will walk away feeling a sense of purpose after they read this, but only in the context of community, because I'm really pushing people into community.
yeah, that's so good, man. Um, I love that you talk about in the book proximity, getting closer, leaning into the things that might make us uncomfortable, right? Because that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. I feel like comfort is really just a cage for us. Whether we're trying to do something good, we're trying to get out of something bad, the comfort of that situation or our situation becomes a cage. And being familiar with something often blinds us to the real value or the pain that somebody might be experiencing and what they're going through. We can't see all that there is to see sometimes when we're very familiar with things. And so as I think about increasing our proximity, we're all going to have to, and then you can, jump in here, really change, I guess, those things that are uncomfortable and uncommon to us. We're going to have to increase our proximity to it. In order to do that, though, we have to challenge our biases and those debilitating beliefs, right, and behaviors that we have in order to even do that. Can you speak to that? Because I think that's important. And we all need to do that, or the chaos that we're seeing right now is going to continue because we all have them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a friend not too long ago. He's a white guy, and he was, asking me how could he, learn some of the things that you were just mentioning. And I asked him what his routine was throughout the week. And what he did was he laid out his favorite coffee shop where he likes to go to read books. I mean, the whole nine. And then I asked him, I said, well, why don't you use part of your routine to go to another part of town?
Okay.
And he said, oh, well, wait, what do you mean? I said, well, why don't you go to a coffee shop that is, in another neighborhood that you may drive by? Why don't you start frequenting some other spaces where, relationships can be cultivated in a rhythmic way, where it's not like you drop in and then you leave, right? It feels authentic. Long story short, he started doing that 1 day a week. It moved to 2 days a week, and now he's 3 days a week, and he's established all sorts of relationships just by breaking up his routine. I think what you're talking about, routine is lethal. You talk about comfort zones being a cage, but routines can literally kill you and keep you from the type of growth that God is trying to do in your life. If you ever want to be proximate, you need to look at the rhythms that you currently have and ask yourself, what can I do to break up these rhythms to create a new normal, right? And that new normal will put you in a position to build new relationships, to unpack some of the biases that you may be holding, to even sit with stories and narratives and have the false narratives that you've held about certain individuals corrected.
Right.
Proximity does a lot of things. Proximity changes everything is what I'm trying to communicate, but you can't be proximate if you stay stuck in the same routine and comfort zone.
Man, that's so good. I love it. I love that. That's what's up. So shout out to our winners tonight. I will be contacting you to let you know. No, actually, if I know and recognize the individual, I contact you, but I may not. So let me do it this way. I'm going to drop my email in the chat tonight so that our winners can just send me an email. So that way I have your information, and I'll get the book or the t-shirt out to you. So the two names that were drawn tonight is Sharice Taylor. I think I said that right. Sharice Taylor, congratulations. Sharice Taylor, winner of tonight. And Laura Williams, congratulations. Also a winner. We had a whole bunch of other people enter. Thank you. Jackie, Cherish, Laura, Gina, those who entered. But I'm going to be connecting with our two winners tonight to get book over to them. Terence, I want you to talk about what you got coming up next, man. How can we connect with you? What can we do to support? What you got going on? What's your final message for us? How do you want to send us home this evening, man? It's been phenomenal. Hopefully we can connect again, and I can bring you back when we have our connection conference. I'm trying to get some of our amazing guests to come back. Your friend and my friend now, Michelle Reyes. Hopefully we can get her back as well. I've seen you and her do some great things together. So just wanted to shout her out because I think she also helped us connect. But go ahead and just let us know, man, what you got coming up. What can we do to support it?
Yeah, if you want to find out what we have going on, you can visit lovebeyondwalls.org. Currently, we've been in a campaign called Love Sinks In, providing sanitation to our neighbors without an address, to help fight and prevent COVID-19 spread amongst this community. We recently just set up hand washing stations all around the city of Pittsburgh, as well as in Denver, Colorado, over the last couple of weeks. Right now, we have
Can you
access
tell
to
us how that came
sanitation.
about, though? Because you were kind of
Yeah,
sitting on your couch. I read in a book. Give them a quick insight into how that came about. Look, people, just do something, is what Terrence's saying.
just do something. And also, you can tell a lot about what's in a person's heart by how they treat their neighbor. It's never about what comes out of a person's mouth. Is what comes out through behavior. I think you said that earlier. Belief
Yeah.
drives behavior. But I was sitting around the office. One of my friends, Dimitri, came in, and he basically said that he was afraid that he might lose his life because he had nowhere to wash his hands. Um, and so I kind of came up with this idea to start placing these hand washing stations, um, in the streets, in alleyways, underneath bridges. I came up with the idea of sitting down, listening to the news. And it was just this moment where I said I could kind of sit in comfort, or I can lean into this crisis and show up
Mm.
and still be proximate to my neighbors. And then one of my friends, Lecrae, reached out. He asked me what we were doing to fight this. I think he donated the first 15, then 15 turned to 50, and now we are in 67 cities all around the United States. We also have hand washing stations in 2 additional countries, and it's continuing to grow, man. People have access to this sanitation. And what I like to say is that sanitation is a human right and something that will last long after the pandemic, because people will always need to have access uh, to these resources to keep themselves
Mm-hmm.
clean
Yeah.
and groomed for jobs or job interviews, and just to protect themselves against the spread of viruses. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. I love that. It's funny. I was sitting down at the table. I was telling my son, showing him your book. I'm like, yeah, this guy here. And I turn it around. I said, he's going to be on the show tomorrow. I'm going to be having a conversation with him. Make sure you tune in. He has a powerful story. He kind of smiled like, oh, man, that's pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, man, he just recently had these hand washing stations set up all over. So people who didn't have access to clean water to wash their hands could go and wash their hands. And I said, even Lecrae donated some. And he's like, got all excited then because I mentioned Lecrae, like, yeah, man, he knows Lecrae. I said, but he was once sleeping in a park bench and getting in trouble in school. Teachers was threatening to kick him out of school. And now he can say, not in any type of bragging way, that he's able to change lives with people that you listen to, like somebody like Lecrae. And so, he was super impressed by that. So he's probably listening because he thought Lecrae was going to pop on. I may have not told him that, or told him that because that'll get him to listen,
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
man, that's really cool. So thank you so much, man, for stopping by today. Thank you for sharing your heart, sharing your passion, love beyond walls, and what you're doing. Folks, head over to the site, get on the mailing list, donate. They're a nonprofit, so 501c3. Go and donate to them and help my brother out. You can go to his site if you feel like you need to invite him to come and speak at some type of event. He's available for that as well. You can go to his personal page, Terence Lester. And then on social media, how can we find you on social media, Terence?
Yeah. If you want to look us up, it's at Love Beyond Walls. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you want to look me up, I'm Terence Lester. That's IMTERENCELESTER. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you, Charles, man. It's been a pleasure to meet with you and hang out with you.
Oh, man, thank you for accepting the invite. Shout out again to Laura Williams and Sharice Taylor. I got your names written down. I will be connecting with you. I'm going to drop my email in the chat, but I'll say it here. It is hello@charlesjackson.media. hello@charlesjackson.media. Send me an email if for some reason we are not acquainted already out there in the social space, so that way I can make sure you get your gifts. hello@charlesjackson.media. Sharice and Laura, congratulations. Terrence, I'm going to roll our credits. I want to give credit to the folks that helped this show, who have helped this show all season. The credits will roll, but I just want to give them a verbal shout out. Perfect Zone Productions, JP High Tech, who helps with all the behind the scenes stuff, bring this show together so that I can just sit down and interact with my guests. It's been a blessing to have them this season helping and supporting the show. Shout out to Desiree Reed, my publicist, who interact and help get you on the show. So shout out to her for her assistance. Major Tone Music, who helps with some of the countdown music and all the cool things that you see. But I'm going to roll the credits. Terrence, if you just hang out for me behind the scenes, I want to just let everybody know season 2, Race Talks Uncut, is ending, but I'm glad to let you know that I will be back with my podcast. It's called Disrupt. Disrupt podcast is coming, and you don't want to miss the Disrupt podcast. Why? Because we're going to talk about the journey that I've been on, but we're also going to talk about things that disrupt the status quo, you know, in the world of leadership, social constructs, race relations, and culture being disruptive, things that have disrupted us in our lives. We're going to bring in people to talk about the things that they were doing. Like Terrence, you had a disruption, like your homeless experience, and that rebellious experience was a disruptor for you, but how it shaped you and brought you to where you are now. So that's what the podcast is going to be about. Just giving that quick plug and announcement for those who will be looking for Race Talks Uncut. It's going to be sort of redone, and we're going to start the Disrupt podcast, so stay tuned for that. Terrence, I'll meet you backstage. I'm going to roll our credits so we can get everyone out of here. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you stay safe, and like I say every week, until we can connect again, to continue to challenge the status quo so that together we can crush systemic